The party starts.
The
Here
party
it is.
starts. Yeah, we'll get going here right away. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to jump right in here and share screen. And the intention is we'll kick it off with a video that really is on topic for what we're here, to talk about today. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Sit tight.
In a moment, we're going to talk about how can you create recurring revenue. Right now, I want to talk about why you're going to want to create some recurring revenue as you build the value of your firm. There are a few reasons, but I want to start with increasing the lifetime value of your typical customer. That's something Brian Burkhart and Son Yu Panda have thought a lot about. These guys started a company called H Bloom, which sells flowers on subscription. Now, when I say flowers on subscription, you may be surprised at that because most of us are used to buying flowers from a flower store, and we buy them on Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. And really, we don't buy a lot of flowers throughout the year other than on kind of key special occasions. And when we do buy flowers, it's typically on a one-off. We make a one-off purchase. We certainly don't buy them on a recurring basis. Well, Panda and Burkhart really set out to try to change the way some customers buy flowers. In particular, they were keen on really changing the behavior of hotels and restaurants and spas because they buy flowers on a regular recurring basis. And so they set up H Bloom to sell flowers just to people who buy them on a recurring sort of cadence. And because when a customer buys a contract from H Bloom to supply them with flowers, the typical lifetime value of an H Bloom subscriber is more than $4,000, meaning they make one purchase to have H Bloom supply that hotel or that spa with flowers every 2 weeks. And that equates to more than $4,000 of purchases over the lifetime of that contract with H Bloom. It makes selling flowers a much easier proposition. They can spend more and invest more in sales and marketing because they know that when somebody makes a decision to purchase, the lifetime value of that customer is so much longer and so much beefier than if they just buy them on a one-off basis. Typical flower store purchase in America is $29, compared with the typical purchase from H Bloom, which equates to a lifetime value of more than $4,000. So number one reason I think you want to create some recurring revenue is it creates a tail to your revenue, and the lifetime value of your customers go on and expands tremendously. Staying with H Bloom for a moment, the business is selling these flowers on subscription. The second reason I think you want to focus on recurring revenue is that it makes your business so much more predictable. At H Bloom, they only throw out 2% of their inventory each month compared to the typical flower store that throws out more than 50% of its inventory every month. Why? Well, because it's rotting in the fridge and they've ordered the wrong amount of flowers. Whereas H Bloom, they know how many subscribers they have, and they know that the Westin in Atlanta wants Gerber daisies and the Marriott in Miami wants roses, and they buy just the number of flowers they need in order to fulfill the subscribers that they have. Now, you may be saying, okay, but I don't have inventory and I don't have to worry about spoilage. But if you employ people, I would argue that you in fact do have spoilage, because those employees come in on a Monday, they expect a paycheck on a Friday. And if you were not able to supply them with work, if you were not able to keep them busy, or in fact, if you overwhelm them with work because you have too much, it can be just as difficult and damaging for your brand and your business. So it's really the predictability of your business that we're striving for when we're creating recurring revenue. The third reason you may want to consider creating some recurring revenue is something that I call the Trojan horse model. And it means that once a customer becomes a subscriber of yours, once they're purchasing from you on some sort of recurring contract, it makes them even more likely to buy additional products and services from you because they have an existing relationship. They know and they trust you, and they have this cadence to your relationship, this momentum, because you're in touch with them every month. You have permission to communicate with them. And it makes them much more likely to buy additional products beyond the ones they've already contracted with you to buy. Let me give you an example. Amazon Prime, 10 million subscribers around the world. The value proposition, streaming movies and discount free shipping on a lot of the products that they sell. Well, Amazon has analyzed the typical spend of a Amazon Prime customer and compared it to the typical spend of an Amazon regular customer. And so the average Amazon customer, non-Prime subscriber, spends about $600 every year with Amazon. But the average Amazon Prime subscriber spends more than $1,500 a year with Amazon. Now, part of that is because the Amazon Prime subscriber gets free shipping as part of their subscription. But an additional layer is that there's a pre-existing relationship. They're a Prime subscriber. They're paying for Prime once a year. They want to get their value throughout the year, and it makes them more likely to buy additional products and services. And we see that not just with Amazon, but with virtually every subscription company. Once we've got that recurring relationship that's built up over time, it makes us much more likely to buy additional products and services. The fourth, and arguably for our purposes, the most important reason we want you to create some recurring revenue is that it drives up the value of your company. I don't care if you're in a manufacturing business, a retail business, a professional service business, a distribution business. The more recurring revenue you have, the more valuable your company. Now, I'm going to give you a specific example from one specific industry, but rest assured, this trend holds true in virtually every industry. The example I'll share with you comes from the security business. You know, the guys that install security systems in your home or your office. They come in, they install the keypad, they wire up the sensors on the windows. Those companies have two forms of revenue. They've got installation revenue when they come and install the keypads in your home or office. And then they have recurring, or what they call monitoring revenue, the $29 or $39 a month we spend to have them monitor the system. Well, today, the typical acquirer, when they go to acquire a business, will spend much less for the installation revenue. So for example, if you had $1 million company, if you had a gross revenue of $1 million, and all you do is install security systems, you then outsource the recurring revenue to somebody else. All you do is the installation part. Those businesses are trading right now at about 75 cents for every dollar of revenues. So your $1 million security business that just does installations is worth about $750,000 today. Contrast that with a company that just does the recurring revenue. In fact, they outsource the installation, the one-off revenue that nobody wants. All they do is the recurring or monitoring revenue. Those businesses are getting about $2 for every dollar of revenue. So if all you have is recurring revenue and you're generating $1 million in revenue, that business is worth more like $2 million to a potential acquirer, or almost 3 times more than the guys doing the installation work. And again, we see this trend hold true across almost every industry. The more recurring revenue you have, the more valuable your business.
I'm going to stop the share just for a second to say hello. And I'm going to ask folks if they look up in the upper right-hand corner under view, if they can set their, their option to speaker view. And that way it'll kind of zone in on the panelists, and any of the slides I have to share will obviously come up anyways. Other than that, I think the audio's okay. Give me a hands up, hands down if you got any other issues. Also, down at the bottom of your screen, you should see reactions. And I think that's how we would do some hand gestures to raise a hand, that sort of thing. I personally have not used that feature before. Does anybody have some experience with that? All right, I guess I just activated something for myself there. That's the raise hand feature. That's not what I mean to do. Well, we're gonna need to wing it on that. I'm gonna go back and share screen, and just bear with me for a sec. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be here and share my message with all of you, and for breaking free from your day-to-day battle to join us. And that includes our panelists who are volunteering their time today. So thank you very much. Welcome to Boardroom Fix. The big question: how are business owners like us that didn't take on VC money, who are limited in capital and resources, how do we get noticed in a noisy marketplace? Those of us that are seemingly stuck in the trenches of daily operations, how do we crack that secret code that enables us to build a scalable version of our business so that we have a sustainable enterprise with options? And so as a result, we become a desirable target to investors and acquirers. That is the question, and this is the webinar series that will give you the answers. My name's Kevin Polson, and welcome to the Boardroom Fix. So what I'd like to do is, welcome you again. I'm going to talk about some what I think are really fun and exciting things. Today, I'm going to show you how to crack the code and unlock a scalable version of your business worth 2 to 10x more without venture capital. Hopefully that sounds all right to folks. So, just to kind of compare notes a little bit, I think everybody here today virtually is an entrepreneur. They're either a founder, an owner, acting as a CEO or president, of a lower middle market company. And, if you've, struggled at, sort of finding that secret sauce, for unlocking the scalable version of your business in the past, right? It's not your fault, right? So entrepreneurship, it's hard, and the deck is stacked. There's a lot of information out there, and it can be pretty confusing. And sometimes that information overload, is what keeps us from success. But, as one of my mentors used to say, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. But you guys probably know when you go to a cocktail party out there, you're probably in the minority. A lot of folks, have the corporate jobs, and they, can live in a different universe. If you've tried a lot of different things in the past, always sort of striving to figure out how to get things a little bit more in the groove so you could just take it to that next level, put your fears at rest, because I think that it comes down to getting the right kind of support and getting the right person to help you. The big corporations, they want you to think you need venture capital and a bunch of MBAs to be successful. But, I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. They have their own reasons for wanting you to think that, but it's not true. And if you've ever thought the deck is stacked in favor of the banks and big business, it absolutely is. Big business has layers and layers of business experts. While, when it's time to cash in on your hard work, the liquidity for privately held businesses, frankly, it kind of sucks. If you think a publicly traded company, profit earnings ratio starts at 16 times earnings. And when you consider privately held companies, you're looking at 5 or 6 on the high side. The difference with our community here at AlphaEquity is that, we're bootstrapped entrepreneurs, and we actually care about your success, and we truly want to see you, live the life of your dreams. So that's what we're here for. And I know that you have a dream to change the world and, kind of make your own impact and your own mark. And I want to help show you how to make that happen. So this next slide is actually taken from Grant Cardone's 10X Growth Conference in 2018. And this was an event that Russell Brunson was keynote for. And what's pretty cool about this is every one of these lights, represents an entrepreneur. And for me, the only people in the world that are going to sort of change things really are the entrepreneurs. And, that's why I'm here today. And I wanted to, kind of bring you guys into the AlphaEquity fold and have you get a taste of the Kool-Aid that we're drinking over here. So how to increase the value of your business 2 to 10x without venture capital by building a scalable version of your business. Now, you might think that that's perhaps a little aggressive, but, I'm going to use this example. You guys may have heard this one before, but it goes back to the 4-minute mile, when it was thought that it was like physically impossible for the human body, right, to be able to expend energy at the rate necessary, to in fact break the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister did it in 1965 in May. And, that's really all it took, was that mindset. After that, it took 46 days before that record was broken again. And then there was really a litany of people, after that were successful in breaking it. So we're going to talk more about that today, but we're really trying to, leverage off of other people's successes and modeling what works so that we can all, take our businesses forward to the next level. So my goal for this presentation is to help two kinds of people. So for those who are not even thinking about a transaction to sell all or part of your business, this presentation will show you how to build that scalable version of your business so you can break free from day to day, basically to de-risk the future by creating, a more sustainable version of your business that'll be able to run itself, with less dependence on you. So creating, a valuable asset for the future. So, you'll have sustainability at some point down the road when you have your next calling and you decide to cash in on your hard work, you'll be well poised to do that. The other kind of person are those that are just beginning to think about a transaction. And this presentation will show you, point out how you can increase the value of your business, literally 2 to 10x, again, without venture capital. A proven process for architecting scalable companies and positioned to be, strategically attractive to investor and acquirers, with a framework that helps you, get to the finish line and secure a premium transaction outcome. So, my goal over the next, some ice falling out there. We're outside of Boston, got a little bit of snow, but hopefully it's going to stay clear for some time. So in the next 60 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that the AlphaEquity framework is the key to cracking the code and unlocking a scalable version of your business. I'm going to show you my proprietary framework that will make it simple for you to achieve that result. And again, without venture capital. So for those of you who don't me, I'm Kevin Polson. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And I've developed a bit of an obsession of helping other entrepreneurs all around the world. And I found, nothing really is quite as rewarding and fulfilling as that. I've had an opportunity to work with some really amazing people, but, sort of dating back, I founded my first business when I was 18 years old in between high school and college. And right away, I kind of caught the bug. It was nothing that I had ever really thought of or considered, but I sort of fell into my first business. And I just remember, at 18 years old, jumping out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning, like excited to get to work. I never experienced that feeling before. And over, the next 30 years, really, I had an amazing chance to work with a ton of bootstrap companies from every corner of the economy. And, more recently, I've been able to sort of shift, my attention to founding and building companies to really helping other entrepreneurs figure out, how to scale and take their companies to exit. It's really, I'm surprised to find it even more rewarding than the first part. So, I used to feel that my business was unique. I spent the first half of my career, I was all jazzed up about, creating and introducing the next big thing into the marketplace. And I was in applied development and micro packaging and cooling with digital equipment. I invented a reusable toothpaste pump with a recyclable cartridge in the consumer packaging space. I've done a lot of stuff, and I've had a really great time doing it. But I always felt starved for time, people and money, and I felt like it wouldn't be helpful really talking to experts outside my business. I didn't have the money to hire any consultants, and it would really just be a distraction from getting done, what I thought needed to be done. I think that secret number one that I learned is that it really isn't about, what you're building. It's about how you build it. And you may recognize this story, from some of the great marketers out there, like Russell Brunson. And for him, he literally started off, his first product was a CD on how to make a potato gun, if anybody's familiar with a potato gun. And, he learned a ton of lessons, had some hard knocks, finally fell on, a formula, that was working for him. And his sort of epiphany was, you know what, it's not whether it's a CD for a potato gun or, toothpaste. It's really this framework, this process, for being successful at how to sell online. Now, for me, it was a little bit analogous to that. It was really about, again, early on, I was all about the product, what product was being innovated and being brought to market. It was really the last part of my career that I started to realize, you know what, it doesn't matter if it's, high tech, ed tech, fintech, or toothpaste. It's really about how you build a scalable business. I think that, the process, the framework, the vehicle you use, becomes quite important. So it's about taking your company's temperature and, quantifying the potential unlocked company value. And we'll show you how to measure your company's scalability score here in a bit. I think that I learned the hard way. I wasn't good at asking for help, frankly. I started out as an engineer. It's kind of a bit of an engineer's mentality, perhaps. But after skinning my knees for many, many years, doing things the hard way, it started to be apparent to me that, again, it gets back to the how, not the what. And I crossed paths with a guy by the name of John Warlow. And John's a serial entrepreneur. And, after selling his fourth or fifth company, he realized he was always sitting across the table from these professional M&A types, whose job it was to not pay him a lot for his business, right? So he knew he understood his business, but he didn't know the M&A world. And he found he was consistently sort of fighting above his weight class, if you get what I mean. And that was the inspiration to start a database in 2012 for tracking what is about a company's fundamentals, what it is about a company's fundamentals, what I say under the hood, that fetches an above average, an average, or a below average company valuation. And, with tens of thousands of companies being tracked, this proprietary database has become quite useful and has informed our framework and enables us to identify opportunities for improving the value and scalability of a business. Now, this evolution sort of became my inspiration for building a scalability framework that would really level the playing field for lower middle market business owners. So, I'm teaching bootstrap business owners all over the world, how to do this 2 to 10x thing through this scalability framework. And it's, statistically proven to fetch higher valuations. And I think it really has been proven to show that it doesn't matter, what the business is, and it is quite successful cross industry. So it turns out the market is pretty smart, right? Investors don't really care that much about the market, right? It really comes down to risk and upside. If they put in X amount of dollars, what's the risk level and what's the potential return and upside? So the framework has really been quite remarkable in its ability to look across industry. Now, what you're talking or what you're looking at here, rather, is some of the output of this framework, and it's comparing the scalability score of a company versus the company value. So you can see in this example in the upper right-hand corner, this is the business value for somebody in the software publishing space. And it's basically showing top of the bell curve, that's the average zone. That's a score of 60, and it's out of 100. And that company, an average company, would score about 3.3 on a multiple, on a valuation multiple. This company in question, used as an example here, actually did quite well. They scored an 82, which put their valuation multiple up around 5.3. So you can see we're trying to move you up the curve to the right in the direction of the strategic range. And that's when we can begin to actually get those multiples pushed higher, either finding a strategic buyer that, you know, has the ability to take what you've done and do a lot more with it, as opposed to just a straight financial purchase. Comparatively, if somebody scores to the left of average and perhaps as far over as a 30 on the far left, you can see that you're getting into a bit of troubled waters where it's going to be quite challenging and difficult, in fact, to find a buyer or an investor, you know, for your company. So, you know, secret number 2, prioritizing your actions, and false belief, you know, I don't have time. So I mentioned earlier, you know, I've done it. I've built companies from scratch. It's a tough grind, and it never feels like you have enough time in the day. But with our framework, we can help to really prioritize what the key initiatives are for you to be focused on. And at the end of the day, as you begin to build a more scalable company, you're actually going to be able to free up time. You know, part of the goal of a scalable company, as you know, is really to make the founding team less core to day-to-day operations, so they can spend more time working on the business instead of in the business. So their ability to step back and have more time to devote to some of the strategic initiatives is really, you know, what the name of the game is all about. You know, we have an advisory board member, Dan Wiswell. You know, he actually learned this kind of a funny way. He had a health scare in his 40s. He had a heart attack. And all of a sudden, he was taken out of his business very quickly. And his people stepped up. And the silver lining on that lesson, he's now in his early 60s. And for the past 20 years, he's had the ability to step out of his business because, you know, through that lesson, he found his people could manage day to day without him. And it's really unlocked, you know, a lot of possibilities for him. I want to just play this video for you. This is a young gentleman, Michael Delman, and he's got a great story, and I'll just let him tell it. Whoops.
Michael Delman, I'm the CEO of a company called Beyond Booksmart, which teaches people how to be more effective in managing their executive function skills. When I met Kevin a couple of years ago now, we weren't really thinking about scalability in a formal sense. We just knew we wanted to grow. But the closest we were coming to a real conversation of scalability had to do with this development of an online platform or portal that would enable us to reduce operations costs and integrate various functions of the company under one platform, as Rachel says, to rule them all. So that was kind of all we had going. But our model was very unscalable. It's one-to-one coaching, very intensive, and no commitment on the part of our customers, no real commitment. So one of the things Kevin did, and Rachel's more of the expert than I am on how we did it. Well, when we went through the evaluation process, it became apparent that our membership model or recurring revenue was not something we could rely on. There was no monthly recurring revenue at all. It was zero. So on all of our drivers, we had some good scores, and you know, some of them were quite high scores on the assessment. But the zero on recurring revenue, it was a little shocking to Kevin. To me, it was a shrug of the shoulders because I didn't even see how we could do it. I didn't even think it was possible. But how do you get recurring revenue when your product is so idiosyncratic and you need to be flexible and adjust to the customer? And Kevin was shaking his head politely, but shaking his head that I needed to think differently. Fast forward, that's the only thing we sell now is memberships. People commit to a minimum amount that we call the foundation period of coaching, and then it just auto bills. They're on auto bill after that, and they just keep going. So in terms of driving up kind of customer retention, also not just retention, but utilization rate, So we're having more predictable revenue. So not just longer term, but predictable. Those are two of the biggest changes that we've made. And, there are other things too. The customer success director, Kevin, is something I could probably talk all day about that. But I think the shift to membership was a huge value add for us.
Were you guys able to see my screen on that one? I had a little technical difficulty. It accidentally took me to YouTube.
You can see the screen.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the clock here, and like usual, I'm trying to fit 5 pounds of 10 pounds of broccoli into a 5-pound bag here. And I do want to make sure I leave enough time for the the broader panel discussion. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys 2 more slides before we do that. So what I'd like to show you here is the valuation multiplier that recurring revenue can bring to your business. It's really sort of the number one lever that we have in our framework for, pushing companies to that 10x sort of valuation. 10x meaning 10 times more than your company's value today. So here's an example. This is obviously not Michael Dellman's numbers, but if you had a company that was doing about $4 million in revenue, and let's say they were netting out about 10% net profit, so about 400 grand, they would at best, because his business to begin with, was not a recurring revenue business. He basically did executive function coaching. He had like 500 coaches at the time around the country. He would be probably at about a 4 multiple, which would put a value on his company at around 1.6. Now, pushing him to a recurring revenue model, and what you're looking at here is a valuation methodology for a privately held company with recurring revenue. And basically, it nets out to be about a 3.5 times revenue as a valuation, multiple. And that would put you up around, a $12 to $14 million valuation. So, those are not Michael's numbers directly, but he essentially was able to 10x his company. So he's a courageous guy. He originally was quite baffled at how he could even turn his company into a recurring, revenue model. He had been running it for like 14 years, prior to that, and was just, very, very courageous and thinking outside the box and working with his team. But inside of about 90 days, he had a plan, and within 6 months, introduced a membership model to his business, and he's never looked back. It's been phenomenal. So, what does 10x look like for you? Well, of course, it depends on how big your business is. But whether you're somewhere between 2 and 10x, it kind of gives you the potential opportunity there. And what we want to do is work with you to identify, where those gaps are, where those opportunities are in a very quantified fashion. And we can do that. We can show you the scenarios where we can, look at where your business has opportunity and, quantifiably show you, what kind of increases in scalability are going to produce valuation, pushes. The final slide that I want to show you is this one here. And basically, this is what I call a ridiculous offer. This is something we don't make a lot of money on it, but it's our sort of first step in the process. And that is to have everybody come in the door, so that we're measuring every company under the same lens. And it's something we charge typically about $300 for. And I'm putting it out there today for a grand total of $29.50. So I don't think it gets better than that. What I wanted to do was just put this link into the group chat. Let me see if I can pull that off. And that's basically a link to the Calendly. It'll take about 30 minutes to, have somebody share their screen with you, take you through a series of questions. And essentially, it'll get you back a scalability score, along with, some of the insights that show what you're doing not only quite well, but where your company may have some gaps and what kind of opportunity there is for, making changes that are going to, in fact, make your company much more attractive, more scalable, and desirable in the eyes of an investor or an acquirer. And even to one that up, the first 5 signups, we're going to offer it for completely free. So please take a moment to do that and check it out. And on top of that, we offer a 30-day guarantee on any of our support offerings. So, if at any point you decide, hey, this isn't what I thought it was, no questions asked, we'll give you your money back. So with that, I wanted to open it up just to the broader discussion here. Let me stop this share for a second. And that's not working correctly. Bear with. There we go. So we have today, we've got Ryan Thomas with us. We have Russ Edelman and John Hopkins. Maybe just starting with Ryan, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself casually, let people know, where you come from, what you're doing here, and we can kind of open this up.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Ryan Thomas here. I'm a former business owner. I built a project-based services business in the technology space, Microsoft stack. And I would say learned the hard way to convert it to a recurring revenue business. I got about 75% of the revenue to, I would call it true recurring revenue by the time I sold it to private equity 2 years ago. And now I'm kind of passionate about the topic, passionate about helping people. And so as Kevin invites me to attend these meetings, I love to answer questions, talk to people about, their journey with recurring revenue, and offer any help I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Now, you actually know Russ. Thank you, by the way, for introducing him to the Boardroom Fix. And I've yet to sort of have a conversation with Russ, but how do you know him, and what sort of brings him to the party today?
Yeah, I'll let Russ speak for himself, but I'll give him a quick intro. Russ and I have known each other for a long time, actually, because we both sort of started in that Microsoft stack, and Russ is still in it. And I would say we were friendly competitors at first for a while, and then mostly friends after that, and colleagues, and trying to help each other, as we grew each of our businesses. And I know that Russ has been he's been turning that corner to the annual recurring revenue game as a product man nowadays. And I know it's near and dear to his heart. So I wanted to see what he could offer to this panel. So
Sure.
Russ, you want to tell everybody about your business and what you do?
I got the stage, huh? Sure. Hey, everyone. Nice to be talking with you all. Kevin, thanks for inviting me, and Ryan welcome me in here. So like Ryan and Kevin, I too am pretty passionate about recurring revenue-based businesses. My story, though, is one, as Ryan just indicated, is one where it started as a consulting business. The company name is Contracts 365 today. When I first started it 20 plus years ago, it was corridor consulting, emphasis on the consulting side. And I didn't start consulting in the areas that Ryan and I at one point competed in. It was all around document management. The fast forward story is that ultimately ended up consulting around Microsoft SharePoint. That's where Ryan and I had some of our co-opetition already, and then quickly realized that we wanted to build a product. So we built an enterprise grade product that sat on top of SharePoint for on-premise based implementations. So I distinguish between enterprise in this context as we would basically sell a one-time fee, and then we'd collect annual maintenance. So the notion of some form of recurring maintenance was, at that point implanted into my heart, and I really I like the predictability of it, no doubt about it. However, there was a real transition taking place, and ultimately we came out with a next gen product, which is a full SaaS-based product. So as evidenced by the name of the company, Contracts 365, we're a contract management SaaS-based software company. All right. And we've transitioned completely over to our next gen product, which is in fact the name of the company, Contracts 365. There's a longer story around that. When you take a look at our revenue composition today, about 70% of it is all based upon recurring revenue from the actual annual subscription we collect. We then also have professional services fees as well to help our customers launch our software. Let me pause there. I don't know, Kevin, Ryan, I don't know how far you want me to go into, that story. Happy to go as deep as you'd like me to, or I can take a pause moment. And
Well, I
come
think
I'd
that's
say
good.
pause for now and let's get John just a chance to introduce
Mhm.
himself and give him the high level on recurring revenue as has touched his business, and then we can circle back.
Cool.
John, go
Hey,
right ahead.
great, Kevin. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. So I'll give you a quick background. My name is John Hopkins. I founded a company called Five Way Foods. Founded it in 2016, and really, it's a food company. We make better for you, healthy bone broth. It was kind of my journey to starting the company. A little bit different. I spent my whole career in tech, working for software companies, SaaS software companies. And in 2016, decided to follow my passion and start a food company without any food experience, without any production experience. And it's really with the heart to have a product that was healthy, better for you. So started it then and looked at a channel model for us was really around retail, omni-channel. So having a retail presence in stores like Whole Foods and Big Y and others. Also having a food service component, so selling it in cafeterias and to schools and universities and corporate accounts. And then the last piece was selling it online on our website and also on Amazon. And really that's where I started looking at taking lessons I learned in tech and having a recurring revenue model and doing it with broth, bone broth. So a little bit different, and it's a consumable product. So just about the product, it's sold in 16-ounce glass bottles. It's fresh, meaning refrigerated, and it's for two use cases: cooking, so you're making your soups or things at home like that, or drinking, like a beverage. And there's a lot of health benefits for having it in your diet. So broth is an ancient thing we've had in our diet as humans since the beginning of time. So in terms of my business, really wanting to have that recurring revenue, and in a traditional consumable product like ours, it really wasn't there in 2016, 17, or 18. So I started selling it as a subscription. You can buy it from our website, and we would fulfill it. And pretty quickly realized it was a good model to have that. Typically, an annual customer would spend about $700 to $800 with us on a subscription basis, versus a customer that would come and buy it on the website, on occasion, was around $300 or $400 a year. So it really gave a really good boost to our revenue, and we always look for ways to marry that customer to make them a subscription customer. So that's a little bit about Five Way Foods and what we've done in that space.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, John.
Sure.
So we had some questions sort of queued up here that I could share on screen, but I think it's a good opportunity. What do you think, Ryan? Do people have questions in the audience? They came, to the meeting kind of scratching their head on anything in particular about recurring revenue? It's a small enough group here. Feel free to, unmute yourself and speak up.
Yeah, I mean, this is meant to be a dialogue at this point. We want people to come with questions. We have some canned questions. Somebody can say, hey, the act, it's a really good one. That's one I'm interested in. We kind of have something we'd expect to hear. But if you have somebody who's food services who went from, sort of one-time sales to recurring, you have someone in the product space who went from sort of, let's call it one-time sales to recurring, and then you have someone in the complete services space. So you have a little bit of the run the gambit here. If you want to ask questions, or what's eating at you, why do you want to do this, what problems are you having, we're here to help.
I would like just to add one comment to the whole conversation. From a accounting perspective, there is a big difference in revenue and order income. So if you would sell a 12-month contract on something, you're actually only allowed to recognize the revenue 1/12 at a time as the months go on because of your deliverable. Everything else is not considered revenue. So when you sell a $12,000 contract, you actually don't calculate $12,000 in revenue. You calculate $1,000 every month as the year progresses as you deliver it.
Mhm.
You have to qualify differently on your balance sheet as a potential liability until such a time that you have completely delivered on your contract. And I think especially the first video that we saw, it was very slick. But it wasn't very realistic when it comes to that, because you can get into serious trouble with the IRS if you don't do that correctly. And
Fair enough.
I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's similar to a lot of, accounting practices when you sell a bucket of hours or you take a big order that you haven't delivered yet, right? It's not
Right.
necessarily
Liability,
recognized
sure.
revenue. Right, exactly. You get a big PO for a project that you can only get paid for as you bill the hours. You have the PO, but you can't recognize the revenue. I think that's a similar concept across the board, but it's a really good point.
And the big key thing is your bank account you can recognize that dollars in on your cash flow basis and, use that to, in fact, acquire customers, so you have a little bit of a rocket fuel, engine scenario.
From a cash flow perspective, it is fantastic, but you have to be aware that you can't just spend it. Because if something gets canceled halfway through, you might have to refund something.
I think, Peter, that's tied oftentimes though into what your commits are for your contract. So,
Absolutely.
for us, for instance, like we will typically get a 3-year commit on our contract, and there are only specific conditions that actually allow them to terminate. And otherwise, for us, the criteria is based upon as long as the software is, in operation, doesn't necessarily mean they have to be using it, but that it's operational in accordance with the specifications, then they're on the hook to pay us for the entire 3-year term. Now, we still only recognize based upon GAAP principles, all right, the amount of money that we can actually recognize and we distribute it out over the period, in accordance with what you said. But I think you can certainly, if it's fair and balanced, say, hey, you're going to commit to 3 years for whatever the business benefits are. Certainly take a look at that in terms of future revenue forecast as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You should take it in a future revenue forecast. But and I think you're touching upon a very important term that a lot of small companies underestimate is the legal contract and the legal wording around the contract.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're contract people. We're with you on that.
They have not had the experience or the corporate background to do that. And their contracts are not necessarily watertight. And when you're going up to a bigger player, they'll nail you on that.
Yeah, you 100% agree with that. Is that oftentimes, contracts is an afterthought. We're actually, we're just about ready to sign up on a contract with an IT provider for us, even though everything is in the cloud for us. We need to actually bring an IT provider to help us out with some of this stuff. And their contract was not in the best of shape. So we actually, just in the spirit of being fair and balanced, we came back and said, hey, we suggest you actually do have a limitation of liability, in your contracts and a few other areas that would help them just to make it a bit more balanced.
Yeah, but you are quite unique in that. A lot of
I hear you.
a lot of these purchasing agents will happily take you to the bank on it.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Well, Russ is the man about when it comes to contracts. And that's so by the way, a good point. In case anybody has any questions, that was one of our questions. I think a canned question is, how do my contracts look differently when I move from, let's call them one-shot deals, one product orders, one service engagement to a multi-month, multi-year deal? What does anybody have any questions about how those contracts need to get modified? Limitation of liability is one of the things that I learned not the hard way. I learned it during my deal that it was important, and I would have done some things differently if I had a couple more years to line it up before I sold my company. 3-year deals, least amount of out clauses, least amount of liability, that kind of stuff is a lot more valuable in a sale. Anybody have any questions around that?
Yeah, any templates you have would be helpful. We've kind of gone that route too. In our company, we don't be afraid of using the one-offs and the consulting and the program projects to build your company versus other people's money. That's the route we went, and our one-off revenue was still higher than our SaaS revenue until about 2016. Then it flipped, and now our SaaS revenue is more like 90% ish or better, where a one-off's now just it's a rounding error. So that's don't be afraid to use those. And one thing we got to be better at is better long-term contracts. Get to those 3 years instead of the month-to-month and the only 1-year contract. So that's our next big push, I think.
So you're saying it's a journey. You can't do it overnight. You
You're
can't do it
never
overnight.
done. You're never done. You just enjoy the ride,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to chip away. That's actually a really good point. So kind of the side point of that is you don't just look at your business one day and go, well, I'm just going to sell all this on a monthly service basis and just switch it over. You have to find the opportunities and you have to nurture them. Then you have to learn from the mistakes you make and find more and more products and service switches to get there. And it took me 3 or 4 years. And I know Russ has been taking you a while too, because you had to completely rebuild your product, rebuild your whole pricing model, just change your whole way, right?
It's a John Lennon quote, right? It's about the journey, not the destination.
Right.
So we're on a journey.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I found like one of the biggest challenges for us is that we had to concurrently support both, an enterprise product as well as a SaaS product. So, you really need to take into account your cost structure. And so we've cleared that hurdle at this point with our last customer transitioning from our legacy product over, so every one of our customers now is SaaS based. And the cost structure to support that recognizable revenue each month dramatically changes when you don't have to actually keep people on staff specifically to support those older technologies, and the support associated with that. So that's made a pretty profound difference. I also think too, one of the things, and this is not part of the questions, but I did want to make a point here on this one, and that is when you go to, at least in the context of SaaS, when you go to a SaaS-based model, one of the inherent areas of conflict that I found that you need to kind of wrap your head around, at least that we're trying to wrap our head around, a shared experience here, no advice, okay, is that when people start buying a SaaS-based product from you, there is the question as to, as you come up with new innovation, how does that get factored into what you charge them? Is there an increase or is it a part of the annual subscription? And if there are professional services needed to actually introduce something, how do you accommodate that? Because there is a mindset that, hey, once I bought into a SaaS-based offering, everything is included. And for us, there's professional services at times that are required for a very sophisticated feature, like a delegation of authority or our artificial intelligence play, and so those require professional services. And in some cases, they require additional fees on top of the base SaaS subscription. So at least I wanted to share that experience to say that be mindful of that in the story that you tell, because otherwise you could get bit on that one pretty badly. It's a trust breaker as compared to a trust builder.
It's a good point. That's a good point. And some people do modules, like Microsoft has like sort of levels of licensing and add-on chunks that they can, but they're a much bigger behemoth, and you'd have to build things very differently in the software world to allow it to be an add-on as opposed to just roll it into the whole product. It's probably a lot more difficult for you.
Yeah.
But there's a couple options there, right? There's the module-based stuff. In theory, the customer probably thinks, well, I'm paying software assurance and everything all rolled in already. I should just be getting this stuff as part of the price. And then there's going to be natural price increases every X number of years, right? Where you're just going to start to, when the contract's up, Microsoft does it, everybody does it, right? The price for Prime's going up. You kind of figure out what your cadence is for that. And and it's funny because I was going to ask a question to John, probably similar but kind of different, is that he can't just start adding new bone broth, something to someone's offering for the same price. But he's got an upsell opportunity to say, by the way, we've come out with this new product. We know that you've bought this from me for the past year. John, do you do like analytics or insights onto customer sort of purchasing intelligence? You can look at like, here's what I should upsell them on, and not in a bad way, the stuff that they might like, right? That you are now selling.
100%, right. So the way we let people do it is they configure their box. So we have 4 SKUs of 4 different product types, and they can configure that. But we can upsell them. So you set your quantity. So you get, let's say, 8 bottles every month or every 2 weeks. So you can either upsell more of the product or upsell frequency. And that's how we do it.
Okay.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But it's a good point to look at, Russ, is, how do you continue to improve your offering and, slide that into the product sale? Like, you got to get the increased revenue for it too, right? Because you're spending money on development.
Yeah, it does cost money. Like, we've brought on this new, and Ryan knows all about this. We brought in an AI component, artificial intelligence component, as part of our contract offering. Now, for us, it costs us real money because we actually have to source some of that portion from Microsoft, right? So every time someone runs through a document or a contract through an AI process, there's a cost per page for us, right? So we can't just naturally include that in the base fee. So, we have an additional fee, but there's variability. And do you fix fee it? Do you variabilize it? People don't like variabilization in terms of their regular SaaS-based pricing. So those are the factors we regularly, have to make our way through in terms of how to strategize.
I have a quick question about AI. We have AI elements in our product, and we're adding more. how much does that play into valuations in general if you've gone down that AI path, or is it they don't, or the bean counters don't care, it's just about money?
From our perspective, it's table stakes at this point in our industry. So if you don't have an AI play, then what will happen is you'll be devalued in terms of, even though you might have great recurring revenue, if we didn't have an AI component, again, relative to the industry, then I think what would happen is, they would knock us by virtue of not having it. Plus, it's what customers want. And I think you have to be truthful in terms of what the accuracy of AI is relative to the application. So that's part of the honest discussion you need to have in terms of, sharing that information with your customers.
That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to get your perspective. So, okay.
That's been our experience so far. But it's a great question, though, for sure. I mean, I think
Great answer.
Thanks.
My head immediately went to, intellectual property and any IP helps. But if the market says it's table stakes, at least in your industry, that's a little bit different frame.
You have to take it in context. That's at least what I found.
Russ, do you worry about licensing that AI technology? I assume from Microsoft, but I'm not 100% sure that it's kind of like building your product in China, that they just grabbed your blueprint and they're just going to set up shop next door and steal it from you. Are they grabbing a secret sauce, or how compartmentalized is this stuff?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it speaks to a larger question, at least in my mind. And so Ryan knows I like to go on my uses of writing and stuff like that. I'm firmly of the belief, guys, that if you are not constantly in a state of innovation, you can't necessarily think about what you're doing last week and what you're doing today, but you have to be thinking about the value that you're introducing into the future. Like, if you're not trying to stay ahead of the curve, then you're right, someone could lapse you. Be it that it's Microsoft, and I found the competitive landscape changes as well. When we introduced a SaaS-based offering, what happened was we then went into a world where we were competing with every other SaaS-based contract management vendor. Alrighty, and so that's a different game than if we were purely just a Microsoft product on-prem only, where the actual pool was much smaller. So you have to know your market. You have to think about other competitive threats. And for us, it's always about figuring out ways in which to add more value. So that would be some of the thinking on that one. So yeah, Microsoft might come out with something. I think Microsoft has come out with a toolkit for contract management. But as soon as somebody takes a look at that, they can see the value add that we brought to the table is just materially and mechanically so much. It's apples and oranges.
No, the toolkit actually helps your business because it shows them that you can do it there, and then gives them actually no real ability to do it themselves. Then they go, well, let's look for somebody who actually has done this already, and then boom, there you are. So it's like marketing for you.
Yeah.
What I was really talking about is when you license third party, specifically AI, because that's kind of the big rage. Everybody's, Lamont was talking about it. But AI isn't the definition of AI. It's an intelligence. So you don't really know what it's doing or what it's thinking. And when you're feeding it your information or your customer's proprietary information or any of your IP, do you have any fear that if it's an intelligence, it's saying, what can I do with this? And what am I learning? And what could I potentially be stealing from you, the author of that IP? That was really what I was getting at.
Yeah, I think so. This raises the issue of ethics and best practices in the world of artificial intelligence. And more broadly, when you're taking content and you are distributing it to someplace other than what you have in your repository, then that represents risk, and you need to basically manage that risk. So one of the reasons we, for instance, in our case, partner with Microsoft is they've got an entire committee focused specifically on ethics around AI and the boundaries and guardrails they've put in place, and that genuinely and authentically plays to our story about why we've chosen to partner with Microsoft for their AI engine. Now, we had a lot of value on top of that, Ryan. Microsoft only goes so far, but it's again compliant with, I think, their ethics best practices, which is they've built a whole strategy around that. That's like me saying that when Skynet was built, it was told that it's not supposed to hurt humans, and then it figured out that humans are the problem. It's like the rules are meant to be broken, and AI is going to figure that out eventually too. So I don't trust any of that stuff. So I get it. Sorry, off topic. We're off topic, but it's a good topic. No, for sure. All right, where are we at? Top of the hour. Other questions?
I think we're at the end, Kevin.
We are at the top of the hour. Does anybody have any last minute questions they want to serve up? We can put you in contact with any of the panelists. By the way, I just put my email address into the chat, and always trying to foster good networking and connections. So if anybody has any follow-up, be happy to make some introductions.
Or topics for future discussions. Would love to hear it.
Yeah, great idea. Thank you,
Yep.
Brian.
Yep. Thanks,
Anybody?
everybody. Appreciate the time today. Thanks,
right.
Sean.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank you,
having me.
everyone. Great meeting you all.
Thank you, everybody. Really
All right.
appreciate it.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Have a great
Bye.
day.